My next guest is Dr. Anissa Reilly. Dr. Reilly is a success story. She received her doctorate in spite of suffering from post traumatic stress disorder from issues like those she discusses on her show. She has embraced the wounded heart archetype as described by psychologist Carl Jung. As a result, her soon to be released book, The Wounded Healer Turning Life's Messes into Messages of Hope for Violence to Victory, is bound to be a bestseller. Welcome to the podcast, Dr. Reilly.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Hello to your audience. Hello to you. And thank you again.
Well, tell me about a time when you were in the trenches and managed to crawl out.
Yes. I think when someone becomes a leader, especially a leader of like a school, that's what I was doing as a principal. You are like, yes, I have the baton was passed to me. I'm going to go off running and I'm going to forge the hill and take the day.
Yeah.
But you don't realize that as you are taking the day, there are rocks and there are boulders that people are intentionally pushing down that mountain
Mhm.
that you are climbing up. And you're like, well, wait a minute. We are doing this. We are changing the landscape. But people are like, no, I like the way that it was. I like the way that it is. And I'm going to intentionally knock you down. Another way to think about it is that, you come to get rid of traditional golden calves, and people were getting the milk from the golden calf. And when you come to get rid of that status quo, people are upset. And so if they don't understand or see the bigger picture, their default setting or they go to what they know, which is to assassinate your character.
Okay.
And so when that happened to me, that's the option that people took. They went to assassinating my character. And in this day and age where image is important, online image is important, how society views you, their perspective is important. People really don't know the whole story, but they hear, some idea and it's so sensationalized that it
Mhm.
became a career scar. Right? And so this attack, this assassination attack became a career scar, and it put me in a state of depression. It put me in a state of not really knowing how to move forward. I've always been a go-getter. I've always been someone who achieved, and I didn't know how to pull myself out of this state that was created by no fault of my own and built on untruths, right? Um, and thanks be to God that a mentor came into my life. So I, encourage everyone to have a coach, to have a mentor who was able to help me have a paradigm shift, allow me to view my state from a different perspective, and guided me out of the trenches. And
Mhm.
so I understand the value of coaching and mentoring, helping me see blind spots. And so for those of you who have been stuck and don't know how to get out and you tried, I really say get a mentor, get a coach, and he or she will be able to pull you. And it has to be the right coach, not just any coach. Not to say, oh, I have a mentor, I have a coach. If you still stuck in the trenches with a coach, that's not the right coach for you. Yeah. So that's how. That's my time.
And you just recently left the principalship, so you're now transitioning into full time consulting and speaking and coaching other leaders as well as your ministries, correct?
Yes. So I've transitioning to this place of consulting because of the story that I just shared, that I understand the value in coaching, right? So there are not many coaches out there for educational leaders, but leaders in general who you can trust, who understand the position, who understand the job, who understand the attacks, who understand the trauma that is associated with becoming a leader because you are staying true to your moral compass. And so if we can widen the pool of consultants, then I think we would have better leaders, greater opportunities for people to come into leadership. And so I'm offering my services by becoming this consultant to help leaders who are traumatized, who may be stuck in trauma and don't know how to get out. And so I'm doing that. I am also know that part of assisting and helping is sharing my story. There's power in someone's testimony, especially when you can relate. And so, coming to churches, I'm a faith based girl, I'm a God girl. And so, going into churches to share my story from my own biblical perspective. That's my belief system is grounded in that. And I know it to work because I'm here standing strong, telling the story loud and clear. And so going into those places to share my story on that platform is one way. But also, just because my belief system is grounded in that, I'm also can add value to any corporation and come and speak be a keynote speaker at their
Mhm.
opening ceremonies for their employees to boost morale is all that I'm able to do now that I have stepped away and said, you know what? Let me find out how I can spread the value that I know has been given to me through my coach. So, you know, you pay it forward. Some people pay it forward in kind acts and kind deeds. I'm paying it forward with the knowledge and information that I received that helped me get out of the trenches of the trauma I was in.
And people can check out some of your speaking at different churches on your website in case churches want to bring you in. And you're a minister as well as you are a guest speaker at churches.
Yes. I've had the fortunate opportunity. My pastor began to see some qualities in me that he began to cultivate. You know, speaking is something that you are called to do, and you know, you wait for your time. David was anointed king when he was a teenager, but it wasn't until several years later before he stepped into that role of actually leading the kingdom. We all know about King David. David and Goliath, for those of you who need a different reference point. And so the same thing. And so I knew for a long time that speaking was going to be something that I was going to do. So I've been able to do that and cultivating that gift and honoring that gift. And I've put some of the um, times that I've spoken on my website at Ask Dr. Riley, REILLY.com. So people can see, some people can be inspired. And if you feel that you need speaker, you can go and check me out because people are like, let me see what you're talking about. You toot your own horn, but let me really see if what you're saying is really impactful. And so I encourage you to go and visit it.
Great, great. So you also have a YouTube show, the Ask Dr. Riley Show. How did this show come about, and what are some of the topics you discuss on that show?
Yes. So part of, like I said, I have a biblical perspective, and one of the things that I know to be true, is that what we go through is not for ourselves; it's for others to help them not go through it, bring them out of it, or help them get over it. And so I've experienced a lot of trauma. Another minister that I know says that I was trusted with trouble, like Job was trusted with trouble. So I was trusted with trouble, and now what do you do with it? Because I don't look like 40 miles a bad road. I still look like I'm a teenager. I'm not in a crazy house. I haven't been I'm addicted to any of drugs or alcohol or anything. Any of those things that society believes will happen when you have a lot of trauma,
Mm.
especially the amount of trauma that I've experienced. And so I began to really pray and think about and meditate on what could I do with this since I was trusted with it. And during the pandemic, the show came about. And the premise of the show is that each season is from the perspective of a particular trauma that I actually experienced. And every guest on the show is a survivor, is a manifester of good things out of their trauma. So it's not about, "Oh, I'm triumphant now, the trauma is over," but no, that you've taken that trauma and you've manifested it into something beautiful. And so we talked to various guests who've been gracious enough to share their story and vulnerable enough to share what they've done. And then I turn the camera on myself and I take you into that moment where I experienced that particular trauma. So um, I've gotten great feedback, and people have let me know that they have experienced healing as a result of hearing the stories and understanding that their trouble can also be for their good.
Yeah, and that's why I host the podcast to,
Mhm.
hear have people hear those stories of resiliency. And I think you hosting people and talking about their stories of trauma and realizing, what they've learned, how they've become a better person, in experiencing that difficult
Yeah.
situation. It's kind of, coming full circle. And you also speak at different events. So do you have anything upcoming in November around the time this will be released?
So, the calendar is still we're still working on the calendar because as I said, now that I have this opportunity that I stepped away from the job, it's like now we got to solidify the calendar so we can be clear and sure about what it is. But what I ask everyone to do is go to my website and you'll see what's coming up and the events that are coming up for me and support and come out. And if there's a date that's available, I'm available. Just contact me.
Great, great. Well, out of everything we talked about today on the podcast, what's one thing you'd like listeners to remember?
The one thing that I would like you to remember is although you may experience some trauma, although you may be in some trauma or the trauma hasn't come your way, you can be triumphant in the midst of it. That it doesn't have to paralyze you, it doesn't have to define you, it doesn't have to deter you or steal your joy. And so just know that there is triumph within it, in the midst of it, as well as after it. So that's what I want them to remember.
Great, great. Where can people find you online and connect with you on social media?
So you can find me online. I have two websites. The first website is if you're an educational entity and you want me to come in, also any leadership organizations as well. You can go to you can email me at info at giant step6llc.com. And that website is giant, GIANT, step STEP, the number six LLC.com. That's the website for leadership development with schools or organizations. And then on the other side, with the ministry side and the entertainment side, you can go to ask Dr. Dr. Reilly, REILLY.com. And it's info at askdrreilly.com. And you can schedule and book services there as well. And then on Instagram, it's Ask Dr. Reilly. Facebook, Ask Dr. Reilly. Twitter, Ask Dr. Reilly. And I want to spell Riley again because it's not a common spelling. It's Reilly. Yeah.
Great, great. Well, I've really enjoyed speaking with you today, hearing a little bit about your story, and I hope people will connect with you on either of those two platforms for the educational speaking or ministry, since you are offering both of those types of opportunities for people to have you come out and work with. It's been a pleasure having you on the Out of the Trenches podcast today. Have a great rest of your day.
You too. Thank you so much for having me here and best of wishes on your continued success.